All right, I think it's May 13th, and we're going to be talking about technology. We're going to be talking about food and beverage and all the changes that we could expect in those areas on today's show. You excited, Anthony? He's excited.
I'm excited. I'm so excited.
Oh, my goodness gracious. How are you, sir?
You usually cut yourself off. Now you cut me off.
I finally
so what are
got
you
it
doing
the
in a
right
car,
way.
Anthony?
Yeah. So, Anthony, what are you doing in a car?
I had to take a road trip real quick. I'm not getting out of the car, but I had to go drop something off.
All
And
right.
upstate, and now I'm in my car, and I didn't want to miss the show because I know if you do it by yourself, you will be amazing, and then you won't need me anymore.
That's that's a really good way of putting it. So, Anthony, I guess you're out there doing some sort of drug deal or something like that. It all sounds very suspicious to me about what's going on here today.
I'm actually 50 yards from where the stage of Woodstock was.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm in Bethel, and yeah, it's pretty cool. It's
Maxie Asger's farm.
Yes, I think I'm in a very good. I think I'm in a place that's legal but suspicious. So if I get pulled over or asked for the cops to get out of here, I apologize. So what's on the show? What's going on?
All right, let's get right into it. Today we're going to be talking about technology and where we think technology is going to be headed to in the future in our beloved hospitality industry. And then we're going to take a deep dive into what's going on in food and beverage with our good friend Robert Nyman of the Nyman Group. You don't know him, but he is influenced food decisions that you guys have made in all hotels that you've been at. Anthony, let's get into the tech portion of the show. What do you say? He's not saying anything?
Let's go, brother.
All right, here comes the graphic. And we've got our first two guests on the show. And of course, we got Mr. Alan Young of Puzzle Partners, a real smart tech guy from north of the border, and Mr. Chris Hemmeter, managing director of Thayer Ventures, which invests in tons of great hospitality technology and just closed an $80 million fund, the Fund 3, to invest in technology companies disrupting the travel and transportation industry. That's going to be exciting to talk about. Guys, welcome to the show. So excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, so we're going to see how this goes with Anthony.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
We're going to try, because Anthony's in the car, we're going to try to keep this conversation moving.
Could you hear me?
Yes, yeah. I heard you. Yeah, we can hear you. Anthony, why don't you ask the first question?
Yes, the first question. Okay. The number one question I get every single day, besides cleaning, what's the new hygiene standard? It's technology. How are we going to work in hotels? How are we going to interact with our guests and our employees in hotels? So you just developed an $80 million fund. I know those funds aren't easy to come by. A lot of work goes into it. So that means a lot of people believe in that technology is the future of the industry. Our industry is always, I think, 10 years behind technology. We're going to be forced to basically embrace technology that maybe not even proven, because we need to get to touchless, to a lot of touchless points in our hotel. So what's going on? What's the number one thing that you're seeing coming out of this in technology?
Well, I mean, you just made my pitch for me, right? I mean, it's.
Well, thanks for being here, Chris. Great to see you.
Thank you. Good. It's this is one of the reasons we like travel and this industry, is that it is an industry that has historically been resistant to the adoption of technology. And so there's a lot of work to be done. Over the last several years, it's also been an industry that's been enjoying unprecedented success. And when, RevPAR is hitting new levels every month, a lot of operators, frankly, think, why upset the apple cart, and are less likely to experiment with technology. And as you mentioned, that has now dramatically changed. So, I think one of the big things that we're seeing is a general rethink of what hospitality, the delivery of hospitality is. And frankly, the lines have blurred between what we used to call, vacation rental, alternative lodging, and hospitality or hotels to where we just think of it as this big category of where you sleep when you're not at home. And I think that what we're seeing is that travelers in many cases are getting more comfortable with higher degrees of automation. Like the airline industry has taught us what ancillaries are. And so I think hotels are going to start to rethink those two things. You know, how can they automate certain categories to reduce labor overhead, because that's the biggest cost category as we know. And what kinds of services that have historically been taken for granted can be converted to ancillary services, housekeeping being one of the most obvious, right? We all take for granted that we get our room cleaned every night. What would it look like if that was a priced option? We came in and checked into a clean room, but if we wanted it cleaned every night, there was a price for that.
Right. So basically what you're talking about is the whole philosophy of unbundling, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
You're the first person that has said that, and all I can think of is resort fees, because the first time we implemented resort fees, I think I was the first one to do it in Orlando. There was a lot of pushback. So kind of like the luggage fees in the hotels, but I mean in airlines, I can potentially see that. But we are, not only do we adopt it late, when we do adopt technology, we usually adopt it the wrong way, unfortunately, so many times in our industry. I mean, look at the airlines. The airlines did dynamic pricing 20 years ago. It took us 20 years to catch up with them. So that's potential. I can see that. It's the first person I've actually heard say that. I don't know, Glenn, have you heard that before?
No, I've heard it before. I talked about in the vein of it being a unbundling of services. You see that in a lot of different industries that are trying to adapt to this particular model of doing it. I, for one, as a customer, Anthony and I always like to fight about this one. I think resort fees are offensive, but if I could find that I could lower the price of my experience or feel that I'm getting better value for paying for extra services, then that is something then that I think, as representing the customer mindset, would be okay with. I feel as if when resort fees were implemented, it was an issue of taking stuff away from you and then forcing you to pay for stuff that you didn't want, such as all I wanted was the internet, but I didn't have time to go to the gym. I don't care about the newspaper. Who the hell is going to make a long distance phone call? All of those kind of things. That's why I kind of like took offense by the whole thing. But what you're talking about, Chris, is entirely different. It's about giving people options for the services and things that they might have a heightened interest in. Before you respond, let's get Alan in here because I want to hear what he has to say as well. Alan, your thoughts?
Well, I think we're looking at two different scenarios. One is going to be driven by the market segment and what that market segment is willing to bear related to costs, etc.
Right.
But you also have to look at short-term technology engagement versus long-term technology engagement. We all know that, as you said, Anthony, cleanliness is paramount, but you're seeing a number of companies right now talking about contactless, environments where you use a mobile device in order to check in, check out, all of these different things that are going to come down the pipeline, where you may have a casting television in your room,
right?
Pass from your own device, those kind of things. The trick is, even though the guests may expect a lot of these things to be embedded within their experience in the future, at least in the short-term future, where's that CapEx budget going to come from the hotel? Because right now the hotels are struggling. And so there are a myriad, there's thermal imaging from a wide range perspective that may cover lobbies and do things like that. They're actually doing it in Hong Kong and Singapore currently. There are temperature checks upon arrival. In Beijing at the Four Seasons Hotel, they're doing temperature checks even before you get into the lobby area. So there are some fairly dramatic short-term things that are going to impact our industry. I think the challenge is going to have to be, how do we look at those long-term strategic things once there's a vaccine available? What are these things going to look like technologically, and how are hotels going to be adopted? Are they going to adopt new technologies, and which ones of the tactical technologies will they be able to get rid of?
Right.
So it'll be, I think currently it's going to be a little bit like the Wild West from a technological perspective. But at the end of the day, hotels, associations, and people like ourselves will not be the main people that dictate what occurs. It'll ultimately be the guest and how comfortable they feel walking into a hotel. based upon whatever different standards they decide to implement.
Well, I think the technology has a great way of making us realize there's not technology. So if you do it seamlessly, it almost doesn't exist. So if you walk through a hotel lobby and you're checked in and the elevator opens because of your key in your wallet and it goes to the floor you want and then opens up your door without even taking the key out of your wallet, and I walk in and the TV goes on and I go, hey, give me channel 7 or give me ESPN. I'm not offended because I don't even know what's happening, because it's just part of the experience. It's when like to your point, the CapEx is not up to snuff, so we're having to mix and match, and it becomes more complicated.
Correct. And one thing that we talk about labor saving technology, and I think there will be some, whether it's a reduction of front desk staff because people are using mobile check and all that kind of things. But I have a close friend here in Canada that's the VP of marketing and sales for a company called Real Star Hospitality. They run a number of Wyndham flags. Their hotels ran 16% occupancy last week. They're up to 30 plus this week, just because Canada's starting to open up some of its business. But he never thought that he'd have to have an elevator attendant because of the strict management for social distancing. So there's a job that somebody has to do now that wasn't there previously. Now, how long will that job last? Who knows? Maybe there'll be somebody that comes up with a really cool feature / app that enables the guest to be notified when they've reserved the elevator to come to their floor,
right,
with only so many people. So there will be cost savings, but I expect there to be some cost incurred as we go through the process.
One idea I will take from Shabbat and Jewish communities. They have elevators that just stop on every single floor, so you could follow the rules of Shabbat. That might not make sense in New York City, but maybe you could avoid that type of a cost if you're at a typical 3 or 4 story type of a property. I think that might make a lot of sense. Chris, Alan is bringing up points that you guys are investing in. I think about Dishcraft. You're talking about eliminating somebody that doesn't have to wash dishes anymore. We're talking a Beekeeper, where you're really looking to align all the people in a hotel and get them to work much more efficiently. So there's a lot less hours spent of people being wandering around and confused. So this seems to me, really, you guys were ahead of this particular trend, and now it seems only more important going forward.
Yeah, and Muse is a cloud-based property management system that we're investors in, which is, again, I think a really critical part of the change here is having a property management system that is truly an open platform. Because a lot of the things we're talking about need to be localized. I don't think that you can come up with one solution that's just going to work at every single hotel around the world. So the essential brain of the hotel has to be a very open platform like Muse Systems, and then we also recently invested in Lifehouse Hotels, which is a totally innovative tech stack, small management company for small hotels that has rethought everything about the back office and so forth. So yeah, I mean that's the kind of things that we look for.
Do you think texting is the new basically PMS for guests? Meaning, like, it seems like everybody wants to text nowadays,
or voice,
even in the hotel business.
Yeah, you mean sort of on property, the messaging platforms for people to deal with? Yeah, I think so. Absolutely, right. We're seeing that more and more. A lot of that is native stuff. It's hard to decide if the developers of those kinds of products are truly just products or if they're companies, which is our problem as an investor. So we're interested in, okay, if you're going to have a platform where you're communicating with guests via texts, how is it integrated into the overall property management system? And because right now that's a very kludgy thing for many of the big incumbent platforms.
Love that word.
So, yeah.
Kludgy. I love that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's real or made up, but it definitely made me feel something there. Chris, for those of us in the audience that may not be as technologically savvy, maybe you could explain a little bit about open APIs and why that's important instead of having to do all sorts of other back-end programming to make stuff actually connect and work together.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially, it's we used to live in a world where software was on premise, right? It was loaded onto big machines. And in most cases, the only applications that worked with that machine were applications that were certified by the person who sold you that big machine, whether it was an old IBM box or a Micros box. And if you wanted to use another type of software, and you wanted it to speak to that tech stack in some way, you had to use an API on both sides. And it's API, everybody thinks of it as if it were a thing, and it's not, right? There are different quality and types of APIs and so forth. So anyway, to have an API connection made to many of those old incumbent boxes that live on premise in hotels was very expensive, unreliable. It often broke things, and it was very difficult. So nowadays, what we're seeing are platform players like Muse Systems that have created industrial grade APIs that, in Muse's case, frankly, talks to already 300, 400 different software companies. And where the incumbents, if you were to say to them, hey, would you send me your, I have some software I want to talk to to your box. Will you open up the API? They say, sure. It's going to be $15,000, and we'll put you on the calendar for 9 months from now. If you are a Muse customer and you say, hey, I've got some software, I want to talk to my, property management system. How can I, get your API documentation? They email it to you. They say, go to our website. You can download the documentation. There's no cost, right? And that's sort of the world of platform is where technology, frankly, has gone in many other industries and really needs to go in our industry, because that owner or operator of a small hotel in Bangkok is going to have a different point of view on the kinds of services he or she wants to integrate into their experience than somebody who's running a hotel in Manhattan. And so you have to give owners and operators the flexibility to deliver that.
Yeah, so what we're really talking about is the whole notion of when you try to appeal to absolutely everyone, you wind up really not appealing to anyone at all, right? That's why throughout all of society, we continue to see more niche opportunities that are out there. So we can create systems that work for each individual people. That's why we have 10,000 different cable channels, for example, then kind of move to the on-demand kind of universe. So it's the same kind of thing. Pick and choose what you need to make your business more successful. Alan, you're talking to hoteliers every single day. What are you hearing from them about the issues that they're thinking about, the issues that they need to focus upon?
Well, lucky enough, I have an older brother that runs an inn in Newport, Rhode Island, so we're in constant contact. And one of the issues that he has to struggle with is not only the on-property in-room things that now need to be taken away, any kind of paraphernalia, for sake of a better word. Right.
But sorry, when you say paraphernalia, I keep thinking about Anthony being over at Woodstock.
But for example, he's got a very highbrow restaurant within his property. There'll need to be social spacing with guests. But then how are they going to order? I've seen a number of companies that have come up very, very lately saying we've got an ordering platform for hotels. And I started my career off in hotels in food and beverage, and it's just not quite as simple to letting a guest go ahead and order something. There are things like modifiers, right, those different things. But where it gets really, really challenging is in a fine dining environment where, say, they've got a 38, 68 page wine list. How are you going? That's usually something big and bulky that circulates around the room that will no longer be doing so. So how do you create an environment where you can give the guest the same capability, functionality, and kind of that vision of the wine list? How do you do that? So I think it really is the things that the hotels are tackling with are really the operational issues that they know in order to make guests feel safe, that they're going to have to dramatically change those. But they also want to make sure that their revenues are going to hopefully once again rise as things progress, but they are going to have to be tweaking certain models and literally changing their operations. Guests now are much more savvy at using a mobile device to do a number of things.
You have not spoken to my mom.
Pardon me? No? Well, it's surprisingly enough, as if you look at the uptick in Amazon as of late, I think a lot of people have become much more savvy at using a mobile device.
Very true.
So all of that being said, I think, there are companies that are going to say we're going to make digital menus, all that kind of stuff, but they're going to have to put processes in place. You just can't say, here's the menu, because the kitchen needs to know what it's going to make first, what it's going to make last, et cetera, et cetera. So in the hotel world, I think that's a big issue. I've also heard of actual, physical tracking of housekeepers. There's a lot of companies out there, Track and Protect, React Mobile, that have panic buttons, et cetera, but also have Bluetooth technology in order to ensure that people are not going to overlap when cleaning rooms, because once again, you don't want a housekeeper side by side with another one. You want to make sure that they're properly dispersed throughout the floor. So,
and more importantly, they don't want those do not disturb signs that housekeepers don't tell you about, that they didn't clean the room and they mark it down as I cleaned the room. I was in the room.
Correct.
So that's one of the reasons people would want that technology. I don't know if I believe in that technology. I think that's a little bit too big brother, but but for efficiencies, it's obviously necessary.
Well, I think, Alan, I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be. I think it's inevitable that it's coming. Please continue, Alan.
Well, and my last point really is about that privacy issue. If companies decide to implement facial recognition, and this is way down the path, rather than using a mobile device to open up a door, that you could have a camera in it that will see your image, and you post your image within that secure database for that property, etc. All of these things could happen. It just is, what will the guest be willing to do, and whether that will infringe their privacy or not.
Right. And will guests want to do something on a permanent basis or a temporary basis? Sorry, Anthony, please continue.
I remember when the internet first started, and even we sound so old when everybody started using it. And my friend David Malilly came to me and said, "Hey, I want to start this company, basically building reservation systems for hotels." I said, "No one's going to put their credit card online." So there you go.
Exactly.
Well, Anthony's made a lot of bad decisions in his life, which is why he wound up doing the show with me. So what are you gonna do? So, Chris, interesting what Alan is putting out there. You're focused on investing in companies that do this sort of thing, really understanding where your employees are and how to maximize their efficiencies. And I just think of one of the efficiencies that it just drives me crazy that the industry hasn't gotten around behind before is just this example. You're in a Las Vegas casino resort hotel, or just a very large resort type property. The engineer comes to the room, they assess what the problem is, then they have to go all the way back to get their gear, and then they have to come back and fix the problem. Maybe they forgot something, they have to go back again. So something that may have taken 10 minutes to fix if they had been prepared ahead of time might wind up taking an hour and a half, who knows how long by the time they go back and forth and back and forth. Simple things like not having enough elevator space, right? Where I always see the attendants going, no, you go. They can get caught up in 20 minutes. So by optimizing where they are at any given time, by giving those right tools, you could really save a lot of time and the need even for more people potentially. That's kind of, I think, how you're framing a lot of the concepts that you're working on, right?
Yeah, and I think that what this demand shock has shown is that flexibility is a critical part of business strategy, right? And flexibility in labor when you're running a hotel is now way more important than it ever was. And maybe we forgot about that, as I said, when RevPAR was growing, because we weren't pressed. But all of a sudden, when it collapses in unprecedented and unforecasted ways, those hotels that were able to respond better, those owners that had more flexible platforms, probably ended up burning a lot less cash than others. And so, right, as far as labor goes, for example, one of our investments is in a software company called Opti. Opti Solutions focuses on housekeeping. Interesting category. It's one of the most expensive parts of operating many full-service hotels. There is a 800-pound gorilla as the incumbent in that space, Rex, which is part of Hot Sauce, which is part of New Market, which is now owned by Amadeus, right? So not a lot of interesting innovation happening there on the edge. And Opti has done some really creative things with their platform, and they're operating worldwide, driving more automation and efficiency, better forecasting, eliminating supervisors. I mean, that's another very high category. In
Right.
many hotels, you have redundant supervisors running around, verifying that rooms were clean, running around, finding housekeepers saying, if you haven't done that room, would you do it? And, I mean, it's just radically inefficient. And so, yeah, lots of opportunity to solve those problems. And most importantly, and I think Alan said this in the beginning, those solutions have got to be software as service. They have to be very low cost or no cost upfront to operators. Everybody wants automation and efficiency. Nobody has any money. So the ROI has to be driven as you go, right? I mean, if I'm a hotel operator right now and you come to me and say, hey, look, it's $100 grand, but then you're going to save money later, I'm out. But
Right.
if you say it's free
Fascinating.
and we won't charge you until you've crested 50% occupancy, interesting, right? And that's what Opti's doing right now in a global restart. They're
Right.
actually signing deals in the middle of this.
I've seen a couple of
You know,
advertisements.
it's funny.
campaigns that
Anytime
have done
somebody
that.
comes in and tries to invest in the hotel industry, and I'm going to sell this product to the hotel industry, I was like, you can just open up $1 billion hotel, and you want to sell a 3-cent pen to a hotel, they're going to say no.
Right.
I have never. I mean, it's the stingiest, industry I've ever experienced in my life. It's just the way it is. But everything up front, and then you'll make a lot of money at the end, because I don't want any money up front. But there's so much cost savings, and there's so many things you can do to help operators. The back end is where all the money's at,
And some of
try to
that,
explain that to people is
yeah.
I try to explain that. I try to explain that to people every single day.
And I think critically that's driven by the structure of the ecosystem, right? Everybody forgets. I mean, we all know it and take it for granted, but this industry is built on real estate, right? I mean, in the end of the day, the big money and the big investment and the skin in the game is in the real estate. So the operators, whose budget is it? If you come and say, look, it's $250,000 to install my product that's going to save you $5,000 a month. I'm the management company. I'm saying that's not my call. That's the actual owner of the real estate. That's a big number. And most real estate, after they've developed the property, as you well know, and they're asset managing the property, they don't want to hear about a proposal to put another 250 grand in. Their attitude is, you were supposed to put everything in when we opened. So if you can sell
it's
to
like
an
the
operator,
solar panels.
exactly,
It's like solar panels, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like you're going to save money, but I have to pay $80,000 up front. I'm not interested.
Not interested.
True.
But operators, the management companies can make decisions where, so I think that's important for entrepreneurs to understand whose budget are you going after when you're approaching, the hospitality ecosystem.
Interesting. So Alan, he brings up some good points, but then there's that other layer of it that he kind of touched on at the beginning. When it comes to technology, sometimes it's a harder sell because it's not tangible. A hotel room is tangible, right?
Yep.
Things that you sell into that room, the lamp is tangible, but sometimes technology isn't. So it's got to be a harder sell to get people to really understand sometimes what you're talking about too.
Well, I think if it's a primary platform, such as a property management system or a point of sale system, they get it.
That's part of the hospitality vernacular at this point.
Right. And if it becomes a secondary or tertiary platform that previously might not have seen that much interest, and I'll kind of go back to my favorite subject, which is text messaging platforms, because there were a lot of them. I'm sure some will be called out. But now, all of a sudden, they're right in the sight line of things that will need to be implemented in some manner, shape, or form related to the financial aspect of them. So, at the end of the day, if you're looking at an ROI-based solution per Chris, I think it makes a great deal of sense for it to be based on certain levers that are directly associated with what's going on in the hotel. If you can price a product effectively and make the hotelier understand the necessity of that product, and also the lack of pain that they're going to incur from a budgetary perspective, then they'll be more likely to do it. Back in the days when I was with Micros many years ago, we could sell a property management system to a 150 room hotel for $250,000, right? That was great. Now you've got to justify it every single piece of the way, and the only thing that is very, very complex now, there's no single decision maker on property or within an enterprise. You have a myriad of different stakeholders that want to get their kind of goodie into the discussion in order to help with that decision-making process, which once again makes it that much more difficult.
Yeah.
Anthony, do you want to jump in? Nope, Anthony does not want to jump in. All right, Chris, I'll go to you then for a follow up on this. It sounds like to me he said a lot of things that made sense to you, but the question I have is when we're looking at some of these new technologies that might be for now because of the crisis that we're going through, how do you think hoteliers are going to really focus on what do I need to do now versus what I need to do in the long term? And do you think that they're going to be worried that there are certain trends that are occurring today that may not be here in a year or two, and it clouds their decision-making process? A little bit clunky of a question, but I think you understand the essence of what I'm asking there.
You mean kludgy?
Yes.
No. So I think that's absolutely right. And I think that the next 6 to 9 months are going to be very difficult, and there's going to be a lot of confusion and a lot of fits and starts. Our investment horizon when we invest in companies is 5 to 7 years. So we are far more interested in that sort of stabilized change that the industry will adopt rather than these sort of temporary reaction. My feeling is that we are not going to see dramatic permanent change in human behavior as a result of this. I think that we are going to see a reversion back to the old ways. In 2-3 years, we're going to be talking about it. Can you believe it? No one's wearing a mask anymore. No one. I mean, and it's as soon as there are compounds that treat this and change it from, this sort of random Russian roulette death sentence that it may be to something that's just a really bad deal, but you're very likely not to die. And then eventually, God willing, when we have an effective vaccine, I just don't think people are going to be running around obsessing about who's got a temperature and, where's the hand washing solutions in the lobby. So, while those may be extremely important over the next 6 months, 9 months, I don't see them as long-term plays in our industry.
Well, I want you to know Howie Mandel vehemently disagrees with you. But other than that, I agree. Yeah, Anthony?
I think you're right when it comes to masks and things like that. But as far as washing your hands and the Purell and all that, I think that's here to stay. I just think that people are getting closer to that. I think especially on airlines. But you're right. I think I was watching some news outlets the other night, and I've had an 18-day blackout of news. But I was finally watching some, and I took the sound off, and I just watched the imagery. And I was just like, I felt like I was in a really bad movie, and it seemed like it was already 50 years ago. And you see those images from the Depression or from the Black Plague, and you see all that imagery from 100 years ago. The pictures of that, it was like that didn't really happen. I really feel like that's already kind of like it's almost an out of body experience. So I think you're right. In a year or two, once we have vaccine and once we're moving on, it's going to be a distant memory.
Yeah, and I think that humans, a friend of mine used this term the other day, and I totally agree with it. We suffer from recency bias. We have seen it in everything, and we're in the heart of recency bias right now. And I wish that the hand, washing and the pure. I'm not saying I can't wait to get back to a filthy world. It would be great, but I honestly just do not believe, that the great masses are going to suddenly change, and certainly not long term.
Right.
You're seeing it already now. As soon as states are opening, you're starting to see everybody go back to really bad behavior.
Right.
Well, when I say bad behavior, normal behavior, but bad behavior now. And so I think you're exactly right. Listen, if anything that this taught us is this world can adapt. Humans can adapt. We literally went from, think about this. Me and Glenn had just left Vegas and the lights went off 24 hours later.
Amazing.
Basically. Yeah. It's like the entire world shut down and we adapted. We're all adapting. My kids, like we're in the house, they're laughing, they're dancing. Everybody's adapting. And so as soon as we're able to come out of this, we'll adapt back.
Yeah.
To some degree.
And I think that we're also adapting right now and desensitizing to the tragedy that's happening around us. I mean, that's a scary thing. But I think humans over time, if infection and death rates continue through the fall, I don't think that's going to continue to correlate with the fear that currently exists. And I think there will be many people that will say, yeah, no, we understand. There's death and suffering around us. We understand that, but we're over it. Let's open for business.
Well, we always
Scary
have.
thought.
Well, a part of human nature is the only way we can handle absorbing that is to block it out. When it's happening to them over there. I feel like George Carlin had a whole bit on this about the people that when it's overseas it's one thing, when it's a state over it's another thing, when it's in your community, in your neighborhood, it's completely different experience, because then all of a sudden it's real, things are different. But humans are funny people. There's a reason why we have that old cliche, old habits die hard, because we are going to get back to that. And one other comment based on your, what was that, present bias, what was that great phrase that you used?
Recency bias.
It's great. I always said over the years that I look at these guys on the on the panel. The reason why I say men is because a lot of the hotel CEOs are men. When they're up there on the stage, in the good times, they act as if the good times will never end and there's never been a downtime. When the downtimes are here, they act as it was never good and it'll never be again. We have this sense of getting stuck in our moment, getting stuck in what we're at, and sometimes we have those blinders on that prevent us from seeing the before and the after, and how things are going to change and get back to normal. So that's I'll step off my soapbox now.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yep.
So Chris,
Anthony?
sorry. So
go ahead, Anthony.
So Chris, if I can ask you a question, what's the one technology that you invested in this industry, in the hospitality industry, that took off like a shot, that you expected some growth, but you didn't expect it to really, take foot as well as it did? So what was basically one of your biggest success stories in technology in the hospitality industry?
Well, I think there's two. One of them would be Sonder. If you're familiar with Sonder,
I've stayed at them. I love them. I've done interviews with some of them.
I mean, I think Sonder is on track over the next several years to become one of the largest global hospitality brands on the planet. I mean, it is a remarkable story. Not only has it been a story of exceptional execution by the team, and an incredible financing strategy over time. The company's raised a ton of money, but the dogs have been eating the dog food, as it were, right? Travelers really enjoy the idea of this as a stay option, right? Where and talk about a product that's appropriate to a social distancing world. You go to a Sonder, you don't ever have to even meet a person.
Chris, maybe spend 10 seconds, tell people who don't understand.
And how about
Sonder
something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. So Sonder essentially is imagine a brand, a hotel brand, but instead of being delivered to a large concrete box with 130 keys, that box is scattered around a city. And every single apartment that you might go to that is a Sonder is a mini hotel. So brand standards, they have about 120 different brand standards for their properties. They offer housekeeping. There are all kinds of amenities, consistency with access, a very consistent customer service. So the experience from the traveler's perspective is meant to be, if I stay at a Sonder, I know what I'm going to get, whether it's a Sonder in Paris, in Dublin, in Boston, in San Diego, and so the whole idea is this distributed hotel company, and they've been doing a phenomenal job with that. And it's interesting because their influence as they grow into the hotel space is again proving that there at least is a substantial cohort of traveler that is willing to have a completely automated experience with stay, which is really intriguing to real estate owners. It's an interesting proposition. Could you actually run a full stack hotel that's totally automated and then just lease out the ground floor to a cool restaurant, a coffee shop, or whatever? And that's an interesting financial proposition. The other company I would say that has taken off globally has been Muse, and I've mentioned them a few times today. Muse is the cloud-based property management system. Company's based in Prague. They're operating in over 50 countries now. They've grown incredibly fast and been very successful. And they've, not only is it a great technology story, but it's a great business model story as well.
Great. Anthony?
How about a technology that didn't grow as fast as you thought it would be?
Let me consult my
Every
list.
other
You didn't
technology
think I would
goes
just give you the
somewhere.
opportunity for 2 commercials, did you?
You want it alphabetical, chronological? How would you like the description? It's sort of one of the things that people don't realize about venture capital is they think it is all about the fun ones, the hits that we just described. It's not. It's mostly you spend your whole day, in tears with the founders that are failing, and because
Saying, oops.
yeah, I mean, and even the best venture capital firms in the world will see 40% of their portfolio fail. Startup is tough. Building companies is really, really hard. And so there have been many bets that we've made where we thought companies, would take off. Every bet we make, the best times with an investment are right after you close. The honeymoon period when everyone's like, yes, this is going to be great. The next unicorn. Doesn't quite work out that way.
Yeah,
but we haven't made any radical bets on sort of consumer adoption of technology. Our stuff has mostly been B2B. So where things have broken down, it's been more about those industrial dynamics rather than consumer adoption dynamics.
Interesting, Alan.
No, I was just saying I've been involved with a number of startups myself, and it's sometimes hit and miss. Sometimes it's lack of market due diligence. Sometimes you do a great job. I'm lucky enough to have been involved with 5, and 4 exited nicely. One of them tanked. And I just bought another startup last year, Canadian focus. So, it really is a different world. There's no doubt about it. And it really depends upon the leaders, the direction, the vision, and the research. There just needs to be a whack load of research to make sure that it's validated.
And luck. Let's face it.
That too.
I was just saying a touch of magic.
Yeah.
Did you ever read the Phil Knight book about Nike and how it started?
Yeah,
totally. Love that book.
Is that the best book? It's the best book I've ever read when it comes to business, because you just said the word that made me think about that, luck. It was one person. It wasn't even, I think his name was Johnson. It wasn't even Phil Knight. A gentleman named Johnson plus a lot of luck was the reason Nike became successful. Not Phil Knight. And it's just absolutely intriguing. And, when I think of entrepreneurs and startups, especially in the hospitality industry, especially now after the pandemic, it's going to come just to a tremendous amount of energy from those startup entrepreneurs, because I think the market right now, it's a clean slate. Yes, especially technology. I think there's never been a better opportunity if you have a fund and a great technology thought in the hospitality industry, and it's customer focused. I think you're in good shape.
All right. We need to start wrapping up this segment so we could do a little food and beverage talk. But how about some final thoughts from each of you? Alan, how about something that we could take away from this? Also something a little bit positive about how you see the future.
Well, first of all, the new normal is never going to be normal again. I don't 100% believe that.
Hey, has anything ever been normal?
Not in my life. But I do echo your sentiment. There are some very innovative thinkers working quite hard right now about how can they implement new technologies in order to supply exactly what the guests are going to require, and also operationalize certain things that may not have been operationalized before. But if I was a 100% true technologist, I would be chomping at the bit, because I think this is going to be a fantastic, innovative time for our industry.
Yeah, I think the perfect scenario is for me to book the room, for you to give me the confirmation number and my key and my phone, for you to have everything I want in the room, how many days of towels, how many days of sheets, how much soap, everything I need, okay, any soda, any drink, any food I want in the room. And then I walk right into my room, and you tell me at 2:00, I can walk right into my room. I walk right into my room, and I don't see anybody. And then I leave, and everything's automated. I think that if we can figure that out, that is the ultimate, because that gives the option of basically, like you said, seamless. Right. And you don't have to, and we get used to it, right? Now, the touch points will be when you see a housekeeper walking through the hallway, or you see somebody at the front desk waving to you, and that's either my choice to engage them or not to engage them. To me, that's the perfect hotel 2-3 years from now, and then you can incorporate the touch points as you see fit. That's just my opinion.
Anthony, you just described a Sonder experience.
Yes.
You're welcome. Another free commercial.
Chris, how about some final words from you?
But I really think that's it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think you've done a lot of commercials, but final thoughts from you.
I mean, I would just say, to the entrepreneurs out there that, that it's a great time to be inventing and to be offensive, right? And not be too defensive. I think that we have depended upon entrepreneurship and innovation in this country across all of our industries. And I think we're dependent upon them now. And so, we look to entrepreneurs to step out there and continue taking risk and continue swinging the bat, because I think it's the only way that we continue to move forward. So, it is a great time to experiment. There's an appetite for it now. So I encourage entrepreneurs to keep plugging away.
What would this pandemic look like without Amazon?
Yeah, right. No doubt.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well,
Or
gentlemen.
without vodka.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you guys for being here. Thank goodness for Amazon and vodka. Hope to see you guys both back here again real soon. This was really fascinating and interesting. Boy, Anthony, what a great fun segment that is. And let me just tell all of you out there for 1 second about why I liked Sonder and what that experience was like for me, Anthony, because I had a production partner. I was at a job in San Diego, and we stayed at one of the Sonder places. What I loved about it was we had 2 separate bedrooms. We had an area that we could work at together. We had a full-size kitchen, so we could put all the beer in a big fridge and not have to worry about it and keep our snacks spread out. Plenty of space. Plenty of places to be productive, a lack of people that we had to interact with and deal with, and we could just get to work and have a highly individualized experience that we created. I loved it. I thought it was great. The hotel industry's left open a big gap by allowing stuff like that to come in because they really satisfied my needs at a price point that I thought was appropriate. So that was my Sonder experience.
You know what? You know what's absolutely amazing about this entire show? That I didn't hear a word you said, and I still can't hear a word you said.
That's fine. You're not missing anything. Producer
Jeff, why don't you explain what he just said?
On that note, just before we start the next segment, I thought I'd bring up this comment because I thought it was perfectly fitting.
Well, we're still live, right?
Oh, we're still live. Yeah. Yes, we all are struggling out there. All right. Speaking of a guy that I know doesn't have to struggle, let's bring in Mr. Robert Nyman. All right. Robert Nyman of the Nyman Group. The guy none of you know, but everybody's worked with. Robert Nyman, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Now, Robert's been very influential with his company and what all the major brands, or most of the major brands, have done out there with their food and beverage. So when you think about the experience that you're having, there's a good chance that the Nyman Group had took part in creating that experience. Robert, great to see you here. I guess you intimidated Anthony. He's vanished off the show.
Oh,
that's okay. How are you doing today, sir?
Fine. Thank you so much for having me with you. Anthony, I'm sorry you left.
He'll be back. Okay. He's probably just having a technology issue and trying to make all of the folks in our audience that struggle with technology feel better about themselves. Robert, what you're talking to a lot of people right now. You're dealing with a whole lot of crap out there because this COVID stuff is really disrupting not just the hospitality business, but the entire restaurant industry in an extremely profound way. What are you dealing with today? What are your clients dealing with today? What is the industry facing out there today?
Well, it was interesting. I was listening very intently, quite candidly, to Chris Hemmeter.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he said is one of the concerns that we all have when he talked about, okay, I survived, I went through the virus, I did everything, and all of a sudden now I want to go back to my old ways.
Right.
And it's a very impactful thought because he's correct. It's just like I was on a diet. I lost my 20 pounds. I feel better. So you know what? Let's have a pizza today. Okay. And it's from that standpoint, it was very interesting. We're global in what we do. We're very fortunate. We've been, in dealing with a client recently on the food and beverage side. They said, well, you're old enough. I don't know if that was a compliment or not. And I said, well, there's no rule book. You can listen to everybody you want.
Right.
Anthony doing a no. I'm not going to listen to the people. I'm just going to watch their faces. I think that's great. It's like trying to learn Spanish from television, the way we do it. Okay. So, but I'm interested because everybody said, well, you did this, you did that. And I said, we've been through a lot of tragedies and I've learned from every experience. And that's what I think we are now. I think the word normal, we've told our clients, is not the word because it's not normal. In other words, we have no guardrails, we have no parameters. Because we're a global organization, we're dealing with right now in Asia, and they're in a different dynamic than we are. Okay, we're different in different states around the country. We're working with Canadian people. They're in a different dynamic. So the rules and regulations, the government rules and regulations, are more dictatorial, not in a negative way, but they're going to give us more input from that standpoint. I could talk to you about wrapping flatware, and then in Asia, they don't wrap flatware because it's not their style. They bring you a cup of hot water and they let you pour over your own flatware versus putting it in a bag. So California is talking about wrapping flatware, not in a negative way,
Right.
but the Asian market is completely different. So we're in this whole different arena right now. And what we're doing is taking the laws and regulations of today, which will change tomorrow,
Right.
and we're working through that, and we're doing very wide parameters. Obviously, you don't need me to talk about what the government says about sanitary, about washing, and about masks, and about some people do it, some people don't. I mean, it's hysterical when you see people, where, I don't need a mask. We
Right.
go through that period. Okay.
Right.
Well, guess
The,
what?
the good
I'm sorry.
the good news is, Glenn, I can hear you now, so that's great.
I better
But
get quick on saying something intelligent then. The pressure's
No,
on for me.
No, what's amazing is I didn't interrupt you once the last part of the show, right? Wasn't
Now
that
I know
amazing?
why, because you couldn't hear me.
So Robert, that's true, and whether it be the CDC or whether it be each state government agency, really. But don't you have to look at food and beverage and look at our environment from really ground zero? And it's like, what makes, like, when you're in a hotel, I don't really focus on what the rules and regulations are. What I focus on is from 0 to 100, meaning some people have really high standards, some people have low standards. I just try to incorporate the highest standards possible. That way I know everybody's going to be taken care of. So whether I'm supposed to be wrapping, my silverware, or whether I'm supposed to be social distancing, whatever, I'm always going to try to achieve the highest level of hygiene and safety for my client, regardless of what people are saying.
I understand that, but let's go pre this, which happy period and everybody was wonderful. So you have Anthony, to your point, very good. You have certain standards, okay? And those standards were what the brand standards were and how from a hotel, I'm not going to debate anything on a hotel with the two of you because I'd lose immediately. So what you had a brand standard in a hotel, and that was what we call it, the promise on delivery that someone was going to get. So you had that, okay? So now we've taken it, and if you look at the cruise ships, obviously their brand standards, unfortunately, were in place, to protect the guests and so on and so forth. So now we're getting into a period of, again, not normal. We're actually in an infinity period because we don't know when it's gonna go on forever, how it's gonna be, what it's gonna be. So from that standpoint, yes, you have to start someplace. So if you follow the government guidelines, which is what we point our clients to, because each locale and each state and each country is different. Like we're in lockdown in one of our clients' countries in Asia, okay? And it was supposed to be lifted yesterday, matter of fact, and it wasn't. So now we've put together a brand standard for them based on working with the lockdown and what can be done, okay? And we've said to them, this is going to be an SOP moving forward. It has to be, okay? So we're working towards that with clients. And as far as the states are concerned, Glenn and I had spoke briefly, and I talked about this, that we're really, in the restaurant business, we used to talk about the bookends, which was New York and California. And it used to then filter to the center of the country. Okay. So in a restaurant, if you had a restaurant in California cuisine back in the day, it would filter in. You had something in New York, hot and sexy, it would filter in. Well, that's good and bad at the same time. But now the two bookends, in my opinion, are New York, because of the amount of people that come to New York from all over the world, the center of the world. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that. And now the other center is Las Vegas. Why? Because it's a similar...
Because you moved there.
No, it's very interesting. We've done business here for decades because it's a similar dynamic because you're bringing people. It's an entertainment capital. The There's others. It's also convention capital. It's a weekend. It's got all the dynamics of people. Okay. So whatever way Vegas goes and whatever way New York goes will be good barometers for people in the food and beverage area. Obviously, again, I'm trying to stay away from the hotel side, but if you look at what's been put out by, let's say, the Venetian and what's been put out by Wynn, I mean, they're pretty good standards and they're available for the industry to look at. And I know some people are already copying them, but they're very good as far as thermal testing, as far as having EMTs on site. And the restaurants are going to be, in those places, probably the most sanitary oriented because it's mandated by the ownership and management of those hotels.
What do you think? What do you see in Vegas right now as the biggest change, like to open up? What are they struggling with right now? Because I'm talking to a lot of people in Vegas right now, and I'm getting 17 different answers.
Well, first of all, just a real little bit of geography. You know, when you hear a certain mayor talk about certain things,
Right.
it only represents 600,000 people in the city of Las Vegas.
And not the predominant part of the Strip.
Right. And not the Strip. The Strip, I always give the example of the movie Casino with Robert De Niro and so on and so forth, and the county commissioner. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure everybody has. But so the county commissioners and Sisolak, our governor, have done a very good job of organizing and communicating. Could have been done better? Sure, anything can be done better. Right. But they've said it. They work with all the casino operators and such. So I believe that by June 1st, my sources tell me that we're going to have some type of semblance in the sense of what's going to be open with regards to the Strip, which is the main generator. Keeping in mind two things, that we, the state, didn't close construction. Why? Because we have a brand new stadium going up that needed to be built, and it's by taxpayer money and bonds. And two, we have a convention center that needs to be expanded. And that's going back, and I'm going to answer this, Anthony, but going back to what I said, why Vegas is so important for conventions and group meetings and the hotels and so on and so forth. What's happening in Vegas? Okay, off-strip mobilized very quickly. Many of the off-strip restaurants, they probably are out far ahead of the chain restaurants in the sense of dealing with delivery, services, value added and such. Okay, so you had that. They've just opened up the spigot to where you can do some retail and you can do get your hair cut and so on and so forth. So that's opened up. Okay, so from a standpoint from there, that's fine. Right. So that's, but the best thing to do, Anthony, just lost somebody.
Nope, we're here.
Okay.
Can you see us?
Yeah, I can. The best thing really is they got smart. So they started doing construction of all the pavements. So the Strip is going to be nice and ready for everybody to drive. In the meantime, if you had your bike out here, Anthony or Glenn, you could ride the Strip every day because that's become the thing to do.
But what's the biggest change you're seeing in the restaurant business in Vegas? Well,
they just opened up 1201 midnight Saturday, where you can have a standard of 6 feet between tables. So I did a quick walk through downtown Summerlin, and I know you both know it, which is really not downtown, it's a mall. And it was teeming with people at every restaurant. There were lines every place. So people want to get out of their cabins and get to something. The question is, how the restaurants do it. So, and again, most of these were not chain restaurants. Again, they were private restaurants. The Strip is closed, and downtown basically didn't have a large swath of restaurants. So that's not important, but there's other districts. So people are getting back into it. There's still, unfortunately, and I say very unfortunately, a negativity with Chinatown, as you know, is a big part of our business here, but it will come back. It's just a matter of time because the Asian community is extremely strong and extremely beneficial to this city, and they give, and more give. They're a lot of the ones who've been feeding the first responders, been feeding the hospitals, been giving to charity. I mean, but when you look at the biggest change in Vegas, when you look at the Palace Station Casino, and there's a line, I mean, hundreds, thousands of cars in line because people can't eat. Unfortunately, 3 Square is doing a great job. So those changes, I'm sure they're in other cities too, Anthony, to your point. But the biggest change is people want to, this is a going out city. I mean, this is what it is. But, typically it's kind of interesting. Off strip, a Saturday night is just as easy to go out as a Wednesday night because 30% of the workforce is typically working. And so it's not like any other city where you have restaurants jammed up on the weekends. Okay. So now you have many of these people out of work. So there's like a balance of what's going on every day of the week in the restaurants. The ones that are open, the ones that are offering delivery, and anybody with a patio out here, they're busy.
So, right. Speaking of, giving back and stuff like that, be sure to check out the charity page at GoFundMe.com, #HospitalityStrong. Donate today. We've been doing so great at getting donations to help frontline workers in the hospitality industry doing that. And just a little show note to everybody out there. Next week, we're going to be having Bill Miller. He's the president and CEO of the American Gaming Association. He's the Chip Rogers for the casino business, for all of you guys that know him over at the AHLA. So we're going to talk all about the nitty gritty of what the casino resort business can get into. But, Robert, what do you really expect in terms of customer expectations when they start to come back and they want to go to the restaurants on the Strip and other places? Because those operators may not have the same type of flexibility as those off-strip restaurants that are privately owned. If I had a restaurant that's in one of the massive casino resorts there, I'm sure I'm subject to more rules, more stringent policies and all of that kind of stuff in order to be able to open up in somebody else's building.
Well, I agree with you, and I want to fully answer Anthony's question also. Mm-hmm. We've told all of our clients and some of the national brands also, when it comes to food and beverage, we say, do you have an app for that? Okay. Mm-hmm. So in other words, so the interaction, to your point earlier, Anthony, about checking into a hotel room and so on and so forth, it's the same thing. In other words, can you download the app? Can I look at your menu while I'm there? Can I order on that? Do you have a QSR code or whatever, a QR code I meant, or a barcode that I can work with? Okay. So all the restaurants, and we're working with a few chains also, telling them that has to be before you ever get there. And when you get there, that's going to be your ordering process. So that's an important part of it. People are looking for comfort, familiarity, and easy. Okay. They're also not looking, you don't want to discount your product. You want to give value added. Okay. And so the value added quotient, to that point, our national clients, we're talking about that also. And also influencers to say, hey, I had a great meal at brand X, or I went a great meal at this restaurant. People who listen to other people. Okay. So there's a comfort level. It goes back to the comfort of people feeling what it is. Social media is, as my younger partner, Craig Nyman, tells me, is key. Social media and influencers. I'm reading it. I mean, it's interesting when you find somebody, not me, who's older in life and all of a sudden learn about a Zoom call, okay, or learn about communication. They've never done it before. So now, guess what I saw online, and guess who I saw eating there, and guess what recipe I found, and that's going to be key, because that's going to be the communication, okay, and that's what's happening on and on and on. And those influencers, so and so forth, had a cooking class. I mean, we're seeing many of, and I a shout out, doesn't need it, but Guy Fieri doing what he's doing and really helping the industry along with Jose Andreas. I mean, those two pillars are really, really setting a good brand standard, if you will, for people. So I think if others did what they would do, they would get more traction, from a national and from a branding. I believe that in the casinos, since many of the casinos control the restaurants in the sense of their casino, they're going to push them to open. It's no different than what Disney is doing now. Okay, down in their Disney Village, they got their chain restaurants. They're going to make them get out front. Now Universal's going to follow suit with their downtown area. So, right,
at Disney Springs out in Orlando, BLT Steak is one of the first ones opening, I believe, the 20th, right? So that'll be coming really soon. Interesting.
I mean, many of the chains, and we're not involved with the big chains at the moment, or we get phone calls, but they've asked us, well, what are the independents doing? It's kind of reversal. Okay, it's not like usually it's what the chain's doing, and then it's going reverse. What can you tell? I mean, our largest, as I mentioned, from Malaysia. I mean, we've got a whole protocol and a program that we wrote not only in sanitary, but communication on delivery, what the guest receives, and what we call deliver on the promise. That's really the key. Deliver on the promise.
Right.
You know, that's where we are.
One of the things that we keep talking about here is all these brands keep putting out all of these new standard operating procedures, the SOPs about what they're going to do, blah, 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 keep things clean. Does that mean things weren't clean before? How are things really different now? That's one thing that I keep getting held up on.
You know, that's incredible. I mean, what we've said is, you know how you hear, to your point, Glenn, you always hear about the guest, the guest, the guest.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? The guest is not going to be anything unless the staff, the key people, go first. Once you get the key people, okay, then you have something. So we've said there's 3 T's. It's not testing, testing, testing. It's training, training, training.
Right.
Okay. It's not retraining. It's like you're doing a startup, to the earlier conversation about startups. You need to train your staff to represent your best interests. Okay. And that goes first, ahead of the guest experience, because if the staff can't deliver on the promise, we've told every single one of our clients, it's just not going to happen, because they're looking for a seamless experience. Okay. That's what they want. They want to feel safe.
Right.
They want to feel that things have been done for them. And that's really where we are now. Seamless. Yet we don't know what the parameters are to seam. Okay. It's just, we're learning as we go along. And to the hotel brands, you know, I'm watching them because we have so many people we deal with, mainly franchises and new builds and so on and so forth. And so I'm like looking at them, I'm like, okay, that's great, but can the hotel deliver on that? I always watch, when I watch Anthony doing a shout out, when I watch you and you go into a hotel and they don't deliver on the promise, well, you look at it and you go, okay, what's the brand standard? And that's really where you are now. So we're rewriting brand standards.
Right. So speaking of brand standards, producer Jeff just passed me an article saying that yesterday, California announced guidelines for reopening, including disposable menus, discontinued pre-setting tables with napkins, cutlery, glassware should be supplied individually as needed. Same for condiments. Takeout containers must be filled by customers and available only on request. Tablecloths may be a thing of the past, and it goes on and on and on. We could talk about it all day.
But in California, are we still allowed to hold the glass from the top like this while we bring it to the front, to the table?
No, you have to put your fingers in the glass now to get a better grip on it. All right, so we've only got a couple of minutes left, Anthony. What kind of questions you got for Robert over here?
No, just Robert, where can people find you?
Oh, well, we're centered in Las Vegas. We visit New York once in a while. You know, it's obviously www.thenymangroup.com. But, you know, we're more concerned. We're taking a page out of an old playbook with us. We're probably doing more pro bono and you know, fielding every phone call we can. Not free consulting. We're not into that. But we've had old clients call us and say, hey, we just want to talk for an hour. And so we're doing that. We've had new clients come to us and say, can we hire you? And that's just very nice too. But the main purpose is we want our industry to be safe. We want our industry to prosper. And I'm not, you know, standing on top of a mountain and screaming, yelling, but at the same time, we want our teams and the people, the staff, employees, whatever way you refer to them, you know, it's like the Starbucks experience, you know, that you still want that smile, you still want that consistency, you still want that good morning. And we're telling clients, we want that Disney experience where everybody's happy, but we want to be practical about it. Okay. And so, I'm sorry, Anthony.
No, as you're going to say, when I'm in Vegas, I'll invite you to the poker table.
Oh,
thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent, Robert. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll get Robert back here too once the restaurant world starts to reopen. Thanks again. We'll see you, Anthony. Wow, you know, it was kind of fun having a mashup of topics today. A little technology, a little bit of food and beverage. And I like that we keep talking about the path forward with some things that are clear and actionable insights. And that's really what I'm getting most out of this show.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really think that we've been doing that the last week or so, where we're really getting actionable items, and that's what it's about, because we're opening up. Like you see, every state's opening up, so the sun's going to shine.
It sure is. It actually is today here in New York City for once. Thank goodness. All right,
Look what I can do, Glenn. Look what I can do.
Oh, very impressive. Impressive. I love it. While Anthony pretends it's Passover and is going to recline over there, I want to say thanks so much for being here. And be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. You know how to do it by now, folks. If you haven't done it, what is stopping you? Simply text the word hotel to 66866. That's the word hotel, the word we all know and love, to 66866. Anthony, I'm feeling like we got to donate to Hospitality Strong. Make people realize that the frontline workers need a little bit of support right now.
You know, more and more as this goes on longer, it's really getting serious. As he was saying, you know, in Vegas, there's literally giving out 3 meals to a lot of people every single day. So please go to GoFundMe, USA Hospitality Strong. Give what you can. It's really critical. It's really important. And we're going to have some fun giveaways. Right now, if you donate up to $350, we'll give you a tie with my name on it. And $100 actually gets you on our show. We're figuring that out as we speak.
Again, if you've donated $100 or more, send me an email, glenn@rouse.media, ROUSE.media. Glenn's got 2 N's in there.
Has anyone sent you anything? Because I know people have
No,
donated
I'm
$100.
relieved so far. No one sent me anything because I don't have to deal with this issue that you've created for us. But that's okay. We want to make sure people feel loved and happy because you guys are doing your part. We're going to do ours. Anthony?
And we're going to have a really big prize package coming up in the next week or two that Glenn doesn't even know about. It has nothing to do with Glenn, so that you don't have to worry about it. But you're going to be able to, maybe we'll have dinner together. Maybe I'll fly into your town. Maybe we'll hang out and talk business or just talk crap or just talk about Glenn.
Great.
So a lot of things coming your way, but please go to GoFundMe, USA Hospitality Strong.
And
let's help the hospitality.
I will throw in top donation does not have to eat dinner with me. So you could be relieved and not have to spend an evening with me. All right, guys, remember this. You've got one life, so blaze on. And thanks for checking in.
Checking in.